The Hard Rock Empire is on the air. We are back with another week of podcasting excellence here on the Hard Rock Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. We're talking the last day of July 31st, the music of July 31st, and it was another pretty thin week as far as the number of releases, but overall, some good stuff. We'll talk about that on this week's edition of the Hard Rock Empire, airing on Monday, August the 24th, as we've got one more week in August until we head into the month of September, which is kind of crazy. Episode number 129 of the Hard Rock Empire. So glad you've joined us, and welcome to our new followers on YouTube. We appreciate you and certainly appreciate a lot of the support over the last week, which we'll talk more about in the open of today's program. Joining us in the studio, as always, is Mike. Mike playing through the allergies or whatever tonight, but still in the lineup as always. How's it going otherwise?
Yeah, the roster's pretty thin, so there really aren't any substitutes we can make. So
I don't know if somebody want to listen to me talk about this by myself for 45 minutes, but
I don't feel bad. I'm tired because I slept like garbage last night, but otherwise just my head, like my throat feels like trash. But we're talking about the music from the end of July, so we power on.
We do, working the bass end of the range on this week. But yeah, again, not a huge listing of music. Of course, I will post Mike's playlist. You will see it in the description of the video, maybe in the comments as well. So definitely encourage you to check it out. Definitely a bunch of stuff on there this week that is worthy of spotlight, even if we don't get a chance to spend a lot of time on it. Do want to just take one moment back up for just a second and give one final shout out to our friends at the Vicious Head Society. Released their new album called The Void on July the 24th, and we had the chance to interact with them pretty extensively, first on Facebook and then in our Discord. By the way, join our Discord. You can join at the link in the description below. And then even on social media as well. So in the comments. So huge thanks to those guys. Obviously their album was awesome, and that would have been enough certainly. But the fact that they were so willing to share our posts and interact with us, I know that bands don't always have the time to do that, and we certainly understand. And we're obviously a very small podcast. Closing in on 50 followers on YouTube, so smash that follow button if you'd like to get us across that 50 follower threshold. But we really appreciate it, and certainly wish them the best of luck. And hopefully, we'll continue to hear great things from them as they continue kind of climbing up the mountain of their music career.
Yeah, absolutely. Just being able to find and talk about this music is great in and of itself. So anytime we do get to interact with the actual people creating it, that's honestly just bonus.
It is, for sure, and really cool, and we really appreciate it. And again, those guys were awesome, and certainly excited to see what they continue to do as they move forward. And again, you can find us on social media. Facebook, I would say, is probably I won't say the best place, but that's the place I'm able to tag all the bands, or at least most of the bands. We are on X, we are on Blue Sky, largely as just a sounder for, hey, here's our episode. It's not really a whole lot more than that, but Discord is really is our social media of choice, so we encourage you to join us there. That's kind of where you can keep the conversation going, and I think, it's in a community we're still trying to build, so we would definitely enjoy.
Just don't try to share GTA 6 leaks with us. That's all we ask.
Do not. Evidently that's a thing, and sounds like there's also fake GTA 6 stuff out there that's has viruses in it. So if you're looking to acquire fake or real GTA 6 leaks, I'd be very careful with that as to not infect your computer. Just wait. It's not going to be that much longer. It'll be out. You can play it then, or just go back and play one of the old ones, because those games are still pretty awesome, it seems. So just check one of those out instead.
Speaking of stuff that's taken a while, I saw on Blabbermouth an article saying that Symphony X now plans to get in the studio by September. Were they not already in the studio? I feel like we talked about a new album from them.
Yeah, I think
this time last year.
Yeah, I feel like that was something that we've been talking about for a while, and I feel like there have been kind of hints along the way that maybe it was coming, and evidently it's still coming. It is the Veer Mahan of power metal. It will eventually arrive, and obviously we'd be very excited to see something new from them. Obviously, we had planned on seeing them live last year, but illness and tour buses breaking down derailed that tour with Sonata Arts, which I think would have been a phenomenal show up in Cleveland.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully we get a chance to see them. Hopefully if they do release something new, they'll come around again and we'll be able to see them. But no, I will say the good thing that came out of that, and I mentioned it on the podcast before, is, I wasn't real familiar with a lot of their catalog, so I really dove in. And not a surprise, I've been a fan of Russell Allen, obviously, for a lot of the other stuff he's done. So unshockingly, like, the Symphony X stuff's really good. So, hopefully we'll get something new, and hopefully we won't get another story in 6 months to say they're getting into the studio to start this new album. And we're going to be, which comes out first, the new Symphony X album or GTA 6? I guess the race is on now.
There's only one of them that I'm willing to pay for. So.
Well, that's fair. Evidently, there's one that people are not willing to pay for.
And I get the feeling there'll be a version of the Symphony X album that I can pay for and will own.
I imagine there will be a physical release, probably multiple.
Also a bonus.
Physical releases as well. So, I'm excited. Whenever they get it out, we'll patiently wait. But I'm sure it'll be worth the wait because those guys are awesome, and certainly we'll check that out. But so, a lot of good music, again, for July the 31st. Again, I encourage you to check Mike's playlist. Again, not the volume of new releases maybe that, you would hope for just to choose from. And again, we've talked about this before. Anytime you have a month that has extra weeks in it, sometimes that causes one of those weeks to be a little thinner. Also, obviously, it was a holiday month, the beginning of the month of the 4th of July. So I think that may have impacted July releases a little bit. We'll find out because obviously August release is just around the corner, and we'll see what the first week of August, I believe August the 7th is the week we will be talking about next week on the podcast. So we'll see how it turns out. But again, it was a thin list, but there were some strong options on here. And of course, before we get to the stuff that we did pick for the podcast, we always like to talk a little bit about some of the other stuff. And again, not a ton of other stuff to talk about for July the 31st, but there were a few other things. So before we get to the two bands and the two albums that we're going to spotlight on the podcast, Mike, anything else really jump out at you this week?
Yeah, so kind of starting off with the major releases of the week. The only one that I think of as necessarily being like a huge act right now that released a new album is Five Finger Death Punch.
Yeah.
They released their 10th album, Legacy. The Nevada-based metal band still getting at it. The playlist track, or what I pulled up for the album, it was fine. I'm not necessarily the biggest Five Finger Death Punch fan, but I get a feeling if you are, there's nothing to not like about it.
Yeah, it definitely felt right up the alley of someone who's a fan of the band. So if you are a fan, you probably already own the album, but if you've been waiting to hear if you're a fan, I think you should.
Yeah. As far as re-releases and box sets go, we have another re-release from Chris Caffrey. Album Faces, he released back in 2005, has been re-released. Also Rat, celebrating the 40th anniversary of their album Dancing Undercover.
Oh, wow.
You can get a gatefold LP with reimagined artwork, Zoetrope vinyl with moving images of the iconic band's logo, and the members themselves, all of that for $30. That album included tracks like Dance, Slip of the Lip, Body Talk. Probably worth it if you're a fan.
Yeah, for sure. I think, again, it's always a bit depressing when you talk about these 40th anniversary releases, but understandable as they were, all in the 80s. So, yeah, that's a good album. Definitely worth picking up, and I'm sure, again, the super fans probably jumped on that from the day you could pre-order it.
Yeah, anytime you're giving me a vinyl for like $30, that's not highway robbery by any means.
Not at all.
And then kind of on top of that, a couple albums that I did get a chance to listen to that I thought were fairly solid. The band Sellsword released with Might and Vengeance. They're a UK power metal band. Pretty over-the-top presentation, but it was certainly enjoyable. Then there was a Frontiers act, Lalu, with the album A Mythmaker's Demise, French progressive rock band. Definitely cool stuff if you're into kind of that older feeling prog sound. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, those were two that I had marked to go back. The Sellsword one was over the top, the video that was on the playlist, but like it was really good over the top. Like it was like everything they did was just really well done. So it's like, sometimes the over the top stuff it's hard to listen to a whole album of it because it's just constantly dwarves and war and ships and all the stuff
all the
cool stuff that you get from Viking metal. But what I listened to of that I thought was really, really solid. So it's definitely worth a shout. A couple other things that were kind of interesting on the playlist this week that I didn't get a chance to double back to. Tim Montana, the album The Entire State of Tim Montana. It's another one, and we've seen a few of these type of albums where it's like kind of borderline rock country.
Yeah.
Like it's classified as Southern rock. I think that's probably as fair of a label as you can put on it. But if you're a fan of kind of that crossover act, the playlist track was solid. It's definitely worth a listen. I was intrigued by the playlist track from the band Fireflame. The new release, Force Against the End. They're a Japanese metalcore band, released from Wormhole Death. That was different. Again, if you're a fan of that style, I think you'll dig that. And then the Chris Caffery re-release of Faces from Metalville, the label. I'm sure that whole album's solid. I listened to the track on the playlist, and I thought it was pretty good. So, again, it's just only a handful of releases that kind of made the cut, but overall, I thought there was some solid stuff out there.
And admittingly, I got to a few less than usual this week. Those certainly would have been on my list. The Tim Montana one, when I looked him up, country was one of the tags.
It makes sense
for his sound. So I'm curious what the rest of that sounded like, because I feel like the playlist track I pulled was more rock, Southern rock, but it makes me wonder if the album's going to kind of
lean country, maybe
veer in different directions here and there.
Yeah, interesting. And because I'm not into country music, and this is not a country music podcast, Tim Montana might be some guy. Like I
think he wrestles in NXT.
Oh, that's entirely possible.
Pretty sure.
He's coming in to join his brother for a tag team potentially. Speaking of which, as we
Cruz or Joe?
Yes.
Okay.
As we record tonight on Sunday night, TNA with their Lockdown pay-per-view is underway. So if, obviously the results will be known by the time this podcast airs. But TNA's kind of been doing pretty well. I feel like lately they let Tommy Dreamer go, and I feel like the booking has been getting compliments more recently. So it's writing matters. Good to see us doing well. Of course, writing matters in music as well. So. A lot of good stuff this week. And again, can only pick two. And I thought, from listening to the playlist track of the two we picked, I thought these have a pretty good chance of being the two picks because they kind of stood out. And the one that you're going to talk about first, I thought was like, this is... When I saw the album, I'm like, this is probably going to make the cut for one of us. And I've listened to almost the entire album now. And if you had not picked it, I probably would have. But it is time to get to the new music again. Check out Mike's playlist to go through the whole thing. But it's time to get to the picks. Mike, what are we leading off with?
Yeah, so for mine, we are talking about the 21st and seemingly last studio album from the band Sinner, that being Matt Sinner's band. I guess he's gonna pack up that brand of his music and focus on some of his other stuff, which he has a lot going on. But like I said, the band name is Sinner, and that 21st album is Boom Bang Goodbye.
You said he's obviously a busy guy. We've seen his name come up in a lot of different places, but I feel like there should be some sort of punitive penalty when you say it's going to be your last album, and then like 5 years from now, you're like, hey, it's the newest Sinner album. Which, I mean, I joke because obviously, I'm not sure between pro wrestlers and musicians, like, who goes back more on, this is it, we're not doing any more. But if this is the last one, they certainly went out with a bang.
Yeah, and the good thing here is this isn't like one of those, like, cruise situations where this is the absolute last tour.
Right.
Like,
he's going to be around.
Yeah, like, you're not buying into something thinking you're getting some sort of once-in-a-lifetime thing only to have it ruined a few years later.
Correct.
So he's been around with this band as far back as 1981. The band has gone on and persisted through kind of his other main gig, which is being the bassist and shared vocalist of Primal Fear since 1997. This album is definitely kind of an ensemble, featuring appearances by Ronnie Romero, Eric Martinson, and his fellow Primal Fear bandmate Magnus Carlsen, among many others.
Speaking of a guy who's busy.
Yeah. The rest of his regular band is rounded out by Lisa Mueller on keyboards, Alex Schulp on guitars, Moritz Mueller on drums, and Jim Mueller on guitars. There's really nothing to not like about this album. The review on Blabbermouth summed it up pretty fairly, I think. Basically saying, Boom Bang Goodbye is so straightforward and unpretentious that it defies any desire to find some off-kilter angle via which to assess its contents. You either love this kind of music, this kind of heroic, celebratory hard rock, or you don't. And if you do, Sinner are one of the greatest bands to ever do it. I'm inclined to agree with that, just having listened to this album. It's guitar, melodic rock, kind of veers into the AOR sphere here and there. I think, when you have this many kind of iconic people guesting on it, you're going to have that. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Primal Fear too, so, he'll be around. I think he also played on the Somerville Kiss albums that were out back in the day, which I'm certain had to be Magnus Carlsen writing them, kind of like the Alan Land stuff.
Right.
Standout tracks on the album include Dreams Can Come True, Wait, Leave It All Behind, Are You Ready, Hellbreaker, Road to Remember, and the track that I picked to listen to, which I thought was interesting because it actually features vocals from the front man from the Canadian rock band Saga, Michael Sadler singing, but that song is Turn the Page.
Let's check this out. It's Sinner with potentially their last album, Boom Bang Goodbye. This is the 8th track off of this album, Turn the Page. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, I mean, it is as advertised. Like it, and I listened to the playlist track. I thought, not surprisingly, this is great. And listen to the album; it's great. Again, it's exactly the type of stuff I typically pick on this podcast. So when you talk about you either like this type of music or you don't, I knew I was going to like this album. You mentioned the people that are working on it, people that we have talked about extensively on this podcast, and numerous. I mean, Ronnie Romero has probably been in a third of the bands that we've covered on this podcast. Like, no surprise, this is really good. I feel like maybe knowing that this could be the last one, he clearly pulled out all the stops as far as getting guests to come in and play on it, and really didn't leave anything creatively behind. Like, if this is kind of the last statement of this band, it's one that I think people are going to be able to look back on and say, yeah, he went out at the top of his game. This isn't a band or band members who are, past their prime in any way, or, oh man, maybe they shouldn't have released this. No, this is, again, it's an album so strong that if he decides he wants to do another one in 2 or 3 years, nobody's going to fault him and everybody will be excited for it. But just incredible music talent, well put together. It rocks. Again, it's AOR, but it does rock, which is really important. And again, just not shocked at all that this was great and probably one of the top albums, I think, of the year, to be completely honest.
Yeah, sometimes you feel bad when you pull up an act like this where, he's been around since the early 80s, he's released 21 albums under his own name, and it's like, I know some Primal Fear, but I'm not familiar with his work just as Sinner as much. You kind of feel like, why not? Why don't I know more about these guys and his work, especially?
Yeah, and again, that's part of this podcast is not just discovering new music for the listeners, but discovering new music for us. It's like, okay, well, I need to go back and listen to these 21 albums of Sinner because I'm sure there's going to be a lot in here that I'm going to really like. And even, I will say that I'm not as familiar with Primal Fear. I know a couple of their songs, but certainly not the depth of catalog that I should. So that makes me want to check their stuff out more as well. And again, I think that's the goal of these, because we don't always spotlight bigger bands, but I think when we do, it's a case like this where it's like, this is a type of music that doesn't get played on the radio over here, despite the fact it's got a lot of views on YouTube Music. it still flies under the radar. And these are guys that I want to see more of what they've done because I've missed the boat on it. And so I think there are probably people who listen to us, who listen to this type of music, who are going to feel the same way.
Well, and it kind of reminds me of a story that I forgot about going into this episode that I wish we probably would have talked about at the beginning. But as far as like what constitutes being a big band, it's like I have no doubt that he and his various acts have tons of fans, but it's like to the layperson, just the average music fan over here, maybe they aren't that big. And it kind of reminds me of the Demon Hunter situation.
Yeah.
Where you have the Christian metal band who's been around for a quarter of a century suing Netflix over Demon Hunter because obviously they create K-pop Demon Hunters, and talking about how they've already had like a request for a refund from some parent who spent like X amount of money buying tickets to see Demon Hunter thinking it was K-pop Demon Hunters.
Whoops.
And in the statement that they made kind of with the lawsuit, they made a comment, and you don't want to be disrespectful, but at the same time you're like, wait a minute. And they basically said, Netflix almost certainly was aware of Demon Hunter's existence, and you're just like, I don't know if you really consider how marginalized heavy metal has been here for quite some time. There are numerous metal bands that the random dude on the street has no idea about.
That's 100% the case. And I understand, too, and to be fair, there's no lawsuit if they don't make that statement.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole backbone of their case. Like, well, you had to have known about us. That's why you should give us all this money because you ripped up our copyright. Like, if you compare the popularity of K-pop music to newer metal bands right now in the U.S., I would say K-pop music dwarfs it probably. Fair or not, I mean, I'm not here to judge, but it's just the reality. And K-pop Demon Hunter is a huge show everywhere. And so, yeah, I could see where that might cause some confusion if somebody... Now, to be fair, this is 2026 and you have the internet. If you can't look at a ticket listing for a band and figure out that that's a metal band and not a bunch of K-pop
I'm not sure you
singers,
deserve the refund.
You really don't. Like, let's be fair. Now, if you're going to see one metal band... Like, last week we had The Scepter who released a new album. If I go buy tickets for Scepter thinking it's The Scepter and it's Scepter, okay... I probably wouldn't ask for a refund. I'd be like, oh, this is probably good too. But at least it's like two metal bands where it's like, okay, there's a possibility I might mix them up. But you can't mix up a bunch of K-pop stars with a metal band that's been around for 25 years. At that point, it's like, that's kind of the stupidity tax. Like, you should have to pay the stupidity tax and not get a refund.
Yeah, I would agree. And the other point they tried to make, which I'm not really on board with either, is that Netflix wouldn't have named the show K-pop Metallica. It's like, well, yeah, but Metallica is not a word or a phrase that you would use anywhere else outside of the context of the band Metallica. The concept of Demon Hunters, I saw in some Facebook comments, people were like citing like books and movies that came out decades ago referring to Demon Hunter or Demon Hunters. That's kind of a common term, I suppose.
I mean, that's kind of like saying they wouldn't have named the show K-pop Ghostbusters. Like, it's like, well, no, yes and no. Like, I guess there's probably room in the words Ghostbusters to potentially find some room in that copyright to name it that, but Demon Hunters is just a generic term.
Well, then that almost takes you to the two Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
There used to be the real Ghostbusters, and then like Filmation had their version of the Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And I haven't done enough research to see how that all went, but I remember as a kid, there was definitely this other thing called Ghostbusters, which was nothing like the movie and the action figures I had. It was just something completely out of left field.
Yeah, for sure. Copyright law can get messy, but I don't think the band has a whole lot of legs to stand on this one. I would say best case scenario, they get a settlement out of court.
A go-away settlement.
Get out of the headlines type of settlement so it doesn't go to trial.
And people are talking about them.
So maybe it's a win. They always say, no publicity is bad publicity. In this case, that might actually apply. Maybe some people will find them out. So,
and they had a song back in 2005, I think it was, off the album The Triptych called Not I, which was actually a pretty decent song. Like, I was trying to think of why I remembered them or how I'd heard of them. I don't know if that song was in a video game or something, but I was aware of it at that point in time. So it's not like they're unknown to me, but I'm not Netflix executive.
Yes, for sure. And I'm guessing they don't know They don't know the band. They do now, maybe.
Yeah.
So maybe they're just wanting to spread the word of metal into Netflix and get a metal documentary. Because honestly, if there was a reality show based on the lawsuit, Netflix would probably pick up the reality show.
Why not?
And do a reality show about a lawsuit against Netflix on Netflix. Like
content, whatever.
That's not meta. I don't know what is, but yeah. Anyway, check out Sinner. You should. They're just great, and I definitely want to go back and check out their old stuff. Their new album, potentially their last, released on July 31st. Time to get to my pick, and I've talked about this band before, so when I saw their new album come out, I figured it was probably going to be a good opportunity to talk about them again. This hard rock supergroup, they are iconic, and this is the aptly titled 2, Roman numeral II. This is their second album. It follows up their 2022 debut, Second Skin. Obviously, this is a group of it's your Frontier special. No surprise here. You have well-known musicians with a very talented frontman in front of them, and you end up with a really great album. The band is made up of Nathan James on vocals, Michael Sweet on guitars, of course, best known for being the founder of Stryper. Joel Hoekstra on guitars. Of course, he's been with Whitesnake and Trans-Siberian Orchestra, among others. Tommy Aldridge on drums. Just turned 76, but still getting it done on drums. He's played with Ozzy Osbourne, Whitesnake, Thin Lizzy, and Yngwie Malmsteen, among others. And Marco Mendoza on bass, who has also played with Whitesnake, Thin Lizzy, and actually did a live release with Journey as well. So incredible amount of talent on this album. As I talked about, and I reviewed their first album back on The Vault on July 20th, 2025. I mentioned at the time that it was an idea from Serafino Perugino, the president and head of A&R for Frontiers. He knew he had Nathan James, wanted to find a band to go with him, and they put this band together. Of course, he also brought in Alessandro Del Vecchio to map out the band and produce the band and be on the album, which was pretty typical for a lot of those Frontiers releases. Of course, Del Vecchio no longer with Frontier, so he's not on this second album, which at least he's not credited. I don't know if he snuck into the studio or whatever and did something, but overall, this is another really strong release. To me, you kind of get the feeling that this is a guitar-led band, a lot of guitar harmonies between Sweet and Hoekstra. And they're really strong. James, obviously, you need a good vocalist to go with this much talent, and he did a really great job again. Powerful vocals. Aldridge, I was stunned when I looked up. He was 76 because the drums are great. Certainly is not slowing down at all. Mendoza as well. Sounds great. Bass parts are strong. It's exactly what Frontiers was kind of known for by us when we kind of first started getting into this podcast. A lot of these super groups where you have like a young lead singer or younger lead singer or just somebody who's looking for a band and they put together all this talent around them. And again, another really strong album. The songs are catchy. It rocks. It's probably a little more toward the AOR side than the Center album, but overall, it's really good. One reviewer did note, and it's probably worth a mention, that he was a little upset that Michael Sweet didn't get any vocals on this album. He did have some lead vocal parts on the 2022 release. But maybe they just wanted to kind of consolidate the vocal sound behind James, which is certainly understandable. And obviously, Stryper has continued to release music, so if you really want to hear Michael Sweet on vocals, you absolutely can go do that, also through Frontiers Records. So overall, I thought it was a strong release. Really did enjoy it. Standout tracks include All I Want, Tears Keep On Falling, Take Me to the Place, and the song we're listening to on the podcast, Cry No More. This is Iconic with 2, their new release. This is the first track off of that album, Cry No More. Let's listen to a little bit of that now.
In the streets where the devil smiles, when the sun goes down through the fire, I don't wanna lose time in vain. I have this feeling, I have this feeling that there's no more reasons to believe what is false and what is real. Only need to carry on, wash the pain and cry
But again, it's exactly what you think it's going to sound like. Really strong. Again, I love the guitar harmonies. To me, that really kind of elevates their sound. And again, everything else about it is pretty much as expected, which is absolutely a good thing in this case. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I got to listen to about half of this and was certainly impressed. Not surprising given who's involved. Michael Sweet had a solo album that came out back in April, and then Stryper has an album coming out in September. So it's possible he just wanted a break from singing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously at his age, I think vocal rest is really important. That's a topic that's going to come up again when we get to my vault pick in a little bit. You've got to be able to take care of your voice. And, I presume that Stryper is also touring still to some extent. I don't know how much, but that's probably also a consideration is,
Sure.
If you're doing live shows regularly, you probably don't want to overtax it by coming up with something new. So, and again, if he's releasing stuff through his, solo and through Stryper, he may not really have anything to add to this album as far as like, hey, I want to write and sing this song. Like, let me just play guitars and do that part of it. But I think that's a reasonable take as far as these guys, while they're still getting it done at their age, maybe had a little bit of load management, I think is the sports term for it, where it's like, let's be smart about how we're working at this point.
Yeah, and Stryper did have a few dates in July.
Okay.
Touring in Texas, so
still out there.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen them, again, as we talk about with a lot of these bands, probably should soon. You never know how long these bands are going to be out there, but again, they've got a new album coming up, and we'll probably, at the very least, mention it on the podcast when we get to the music of September when that thing comes out. So, but again, iconic, definitely worth checking out. Overall, I enjoyed it a lot, and definitely think you will as well. So that is my pick as of July the 31st. That is the new music for this week. It is time to get to the vault, where Mike and I will each bring you a classic album you need to check out, and Mike is back to his other vault gimmick this week, where he's going through the years and finding kind of memorable albums each year. And again, you're into the 80s now. 1982, I believe, is where we are this week. And, as I've found when I went through the years, and as I've been finding even with the one-hit wonders, the 1980s just are loaded with important albums, big albums. So choosing one can be a bit of a challenge for sure. But you've picked a really good one that I have listened to a lot of the tracks on this album, but I don't know if I've ever given it a listen front to back. One that I definitely want to do, but what do you have for the vault this week?
Yeah, and with my vault topic, it's interesting because, there are a lot of big albums as we get into the 80s, but there's also a greater likelihood I've listened to some of them.
That's fair.
Whereas in the 70s, it was big albums from bands who I probably didn't follow very closely, like your Yeses and your King Crimsons and whatnot.
For sure.
But yeah, 1982, actually, first I was kind of not with it earlier when I started researching my vault year, and I started looking up 1983. Then I realized, wait, I'm not on 1983.
Spoiler for 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, so I jumped back to 1982. Man, 1983 looks ridiculous, but going back to 1982, some big debuts that year. We had Asia releasing their first album. That album had Heat of the Moment, Only Time Will Tell. Sure, it's a tremendous album. Mm-hmm. Billy Idol had his solo debut with White Wedding, Hot in the City. Twisted Sister released Under the Blade. That was their first album. And then Night Ranger released Dawn Patrol.
It's a great album.
Don't Tell Me You Love Me, Sing Me Away. So decent-sized debuts. Then the list of big not debuts. One that I do have to mention, even though I've honestly never listened to it. Bad Religion. How could hell be any worse?
Honestly, I feel like I need to go listen to that.
They are a band whose older stuff I've been kind of missing on, and I need to check it out. But yeah, that came out in 1982. Scorpions released Blackout with the title track, Can't Live Without You, No One Like You. Tremendous band. Iron Maiden released The Number of the Beast. First album with Bruce Dickinson. Obviously, you have the title track, Run to the Hills, Hallowed Be Thy Name, 22 Acacia Avenue, The Prisoner. Tremendous album.
Yep.
One that I really hadn't considered before, but I bet is really good if I ever sat down and listened to it. Toto released Toto 4.
Oh, interesting.
It's got Africa and Rosanna on it. I'm sure that's really good as well. Mm-hmm. Rainbow released Straight Between the Eyes, kind of right in the middle of the Joe Lynn Turner era of Rainbow. That's the album that has Stone Cold on it. I was watching a video from a YouTuber who talks about metal stuff, and he was talking about how much he loves like the entirety of Rainbow's career, even like the Joe Lynn Turner stuff, which was decidedly not nearly as metal as some of the other singers. Queen released Hot Space, considered to be one of their most disappointing albums, according to critics. Had Under Pressure on it.
That's a great song.
But that's about all it had on it seems. There was another track that David Bowie was on, but he actually asked to be removed from it before it came out. So I don't know what was up with that.
Wild.
Sadly, the Hot Space tour was the last time that Queen with
Freddie
Mercury. Just blanked on that. That was depressing. That was the last time they toured with him in North America before his ultimate passing away.
That's really sad.
Yeah. Duran Duran released Rio.
Oh, man.
Rio, Hungry Like the Wolf, Save a Prayer. Weird thing about that is, as I was going through that, and I pulled up Duran Duran, Rio, I'm like, man, that's a great album. It's their second album. And I'm just like, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, is that one of the best, like, sophomore albums ever? And for whatever reason, it was like a half hour later, I'm looking at Facebook, and I get this post on Facebook, just some random thing saying, which one of these is the better sophomore album? And it was like 2 cassettes, oddly enough, but it was Rage Against the Machine, Evil Empire, and Nirvana Nevermind.
Oh.
Like, kind of weird that it was those 2, but it was just like, why did you find some post asking about a sophomore album when I didn't say anything? Like, my phone couldn't have heard me think it, but
sometimes I wonder.
It's creepy stuff, man. But there was that. Let's see, Rush released Signals, album with Subdivisions, Analog Kid, New World Man. Golden Earring released Cut. Figured I would mention that because that is the album. It's their 16th album, and we finally got to the point where they released Twilight Zone.
That's amazing to me.
A band that had so many albums, and I swear I only know 2 of their songs.
Radar Love and Twilight Zone.
And they were like 7 albums apart or something nutty like that.
That's crazy.
And finally, Kiss released Creatures of the Night, the follow-up after music from The Elder with I Love It Loud, War Machine. Also ended up being the last album with Ace Frehley and the last album before they unmasked themselves. So.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, Number of the Beast was my choice when I went through 1982. That was, they are another band that I have always enjoyed, but never have really given the full listen to their catalog. And I feel like that's still on the list of things I need to do to go back and listen to Iron Maiden. But
yeah.
But no, the one you ended up picking amongst all those really great albums, and it's like, honestly, just listening to that list, thinks there's some of those I need to go back and listen to in 1982. But you still ended up with a really good one, even with all of that you could have picked, and ended up picking this other one instead.
Yeah, doing this vault topic, you just think there are certain albums that you probably need to hit on, just because they're from bands that are hugely influential, and it's a part of their career that is pretty well acclaimed. And with that in mind, we are looking at the 8th studio album from the English heavy metal band Judas Priest. That album is Screaming for Vengeance.
Yeah, like I said in the open of this, one that I need to listen to probably in its entirety, but one that I have probably listened to a lot of the tracks that are on there individually, and there's no way that this isn't just really, really good.
Yeah, and this will also be the last album during this vault topic to have been released prior to my birth. It came out July 1st, 1982.
Just squeezed it in there.
Yeah. Wikipedia mentions that the album continues the band's more commercial, streamlined direction they started 2 albums ago, but does have a heavier, harder sound. It's also considered their breakthrough in the States with the hit You Got Another Thing Coming, which kind of surprised me because by that point they had already had singles like Heading Out on the Highway, Living After Midnight, Breaking the Law. Like, obviously, not having been born up to this point, I didn't know that those weren't like huge runaway hits up to that point.
Yeah.
The weird things you learn when you read about classic albums, though, Screaming for Vengeance was recorded in Ibiza, Spain. Apparently, this was common for British musicians to record in continental Europe for tax purposes.
I always wonder, because you feel like you see that a lot with British bands that they record somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? I mean, you've got, the Beatles have their
You're like
famous studio.
one of the birthplaces of rock.
It's like, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Let's see. We've seen before where, and I think it's been a topic when you've talked about your one-hit wonders, where you'll have this mega hit song that's kind of thrown together at the last minute in short order. Guitarist KK Downing said that the band was quite happy with the album as it was, but decided kind of late to add one more song. It came together quite quickly, and that song was "You Got Another Thing Coming." They were confident in it because it had a good kind of driving song feel to it, but even Halford later expressed surprise that it became the hit that it did. The album itself reached number 11 on the UK album charts, number 17 on the US Billboard Top 200 pop albums, and by 2001 it went 2 times platinum, so big deal there. Unsurprisingly, the album has received critical acclaim. Some of the ones they mention on Wikipedia, AllMusic gave it a 4 out of 5. Metal Store gave it 10 out of 10. Martin Popoff, 9 out of 10. Sounds, 4 out of 5. And Terrorizer, 5 out of 5. They mentioned the band returning to a heavier, harder sound. You kind of have to think that this had something to do with the success of the new wave of British heavy metal bands at that point. Like, a lot of those got their starts in the late 70s. By 82, Judas Priest was probably thinking, okay, there are all these bands out here who are basically driving on the roads that we paved. Like, why aren't we doing that? And I think the next couple albums, you're going to see them kind of reclaim that, look, we were British heavy metal before there was a new wave of British heavy metal. And oddly enough, they would shift their sound again in 1986. The album Turbo, they would decide to go for a more synthy glam style. So, always trying to, if not stay ahead of the curve, at least follow not too far behind it.
Sure.
It's albums like Screaming for Vengeance that made going through the years for my vault topic such a worthwhile thing. Like, Judas Priest has influenced so many of the bands that we talk about for the new albums each week. I really need to go through their entire back catalog, but when I saw this pop up in 1982, to me it was like a no-brainer. I needed to listen to it. Standout tracks on the album include The Hellion Electric Eye, Bloodstone, Take These Chains, Screaming for Vengeance, You Got Another Thing Coming, and Devil's Child. Just tremendous album.
One of the other things kind of mentioned in the Wikipedia article is about they always have this section about in popular culture where these have showed up. I just wonder how many people younger than us were introduced to really the band and the songs on this album through Guitar Hero.
Sure.
Because, You Got Another Thing Coming was on Guitar Hero. Electric Eye, company with the Hellion, was on Guitar Hero Encore, Roxy 80s and Smash Hits. They had the entire album you could download with Rock Band at Rock Band 2. GTA used some of their music in their games. Twisted Metal used Riding on the Wind. It just, they were a band that wrote songs that fit all of those things where it's like, why wouldn't there be? And you just wonder how many people really got into Judas Priest by the video games or other popular culture. And it's fun when that happens, and to me, that's why those types of games are so important, because it introduced metal, and sometimes metal that wasn't mainstream to the masses here in the U.S. that would have never known some of these bands.
Yeah, and now we got the new game Stage Tour that's going to be coming out at some point, which is being created by some of the original Guitar Hero people. Nice. So you got to think they probably have their finger on the pulse of some band that is going to be the next thing that was huge 40 years ago that people are now going to reintroduce themselves to.
Oh, we can certainly give them copies of our podcast, and if there's something that we've spotlighted, maybe they can check it out. But
yeah,
that's an album that I need to give a full listen to. Judas Priest, obviously, just a pillar of the metal community, and their album Screaming for Vengeance, Mike's pick for 1982. I am resuming my run through Journey, and we are now in the post-Steve Perry era of Journey. We are up to the year 2001, which will allow me to put the tier list on the screen that shows where we are at this point. This is basically all the albums that led up to the demise of what would be kind of the classic lineup of Journey and everything they were going to be going forward. This is kind of where we stand. Unlikely that we're going to see a lot of changes at the top, I'm guessing, going forward, but we'll see. Maybe I will be surprised as I go through here. We are moving on to 2001 and the release of the 11th studio album for the band. This is Arrival. What was interesting to me, and we'll get into kind of the details of this album, is as soon as I started playing this, I realized that I've listened to this album before. So I don't know if I bought this album at some point or if I just streamed it at some point or what. But there was definitely a familiarity to it, which was enjoyable. Obviously, this was released on April 3rd, 2001. A version with one substituted song was released in Japan in 2000. It was the first full-length album with a new lead vocalist, Steve Algieri, who replaced popular frontman Steve Perry, and with Dean Castronovo, who replaced Steve Smith as the band's drummer. This is definitely, from a music standpoint, more of a throwback to the stuff you heard in the 1970s and 1980s. Algieri obviously sounds a lot like Steve Perry, which is clearly, and it'll come up in one of the reviews, the reason why they chose him. While relatively successful commercially, reached the number 12 spot on Billboard's top internet albums chart, which is kind of crazy to think internet albums in 2001, but that's kind of where we were. Received mixed critical reviews, some considering it formulaic, while praising such elements as Neil Sean's guitar playing. The album was released in Japan in late 2000, and probably one of the first albums we'll talk about date-wise that this happened. This leaked to the internet.
Wow.
Negative response from American fans prompted the band to record 2 more songs with a harder rock edge, delaying the release of the album in the U.S. Now, these new tracks could be included. The song I'm Not That Way was dropped on the U.S. version. The songs World Gone Wild and Nothing Comes Close were added. The band, as it was constituted for this, was Steve Algieri on lead vocals, Neil Sean on guitar and backing vocals, Jonathan Cain on keyboards, backing vocals, and string arrangements, Ross Valerie on bass and backing vocals, and as I mentioned, Dean Castronovo on drums and backing vocals. AllMusic kind of sums it up as far as their 3 out of 5 review. When they were talking about the replacing Steve Perry, they said they chose a sound-alike Steve Algieri, which suggests that they are more concerned with recreating their hits in concert than making new music. A group of Journey's vintage always risks sounding like a copy band of itself, and Arrival, the first full-length album with Algieri, realizes this danger. But overall, they were pretty positive generally about the album, which, again, it's a pretty solid album. Definitely the music has a bit of a throwback to earlier in Journey's career, with Algieri doing his best Steve Perry impersonation in the front. Not surprising, I guess, to me, but as a topic we're talking about is, to me, the strongest songs on the album were co-written by Jack Blades, who was frontman for Night Ranger. Really goes to show how influential and maybe underrated Blades is in the metal and rock industry. It's another album like Mike was talking about a couple of weeks ago when we talked about their last album that was clearly bloated. It's 15 songs in an hour and 14 minutes. If they could have trimmed it to 10 songs in 50 minutes, I think you have something there. But again, just as everybody was doing then, they crammed all the songs on. And again, as I mentioned, they had to switch some things around to satisfy the U.S. audience. Overall, it's solid. Few tracks you'll be clamoring to go back and listen to, but nothing bad or offensive, but it's just okay, which is unsurprising. And so on the tier list, it drops into that third category. Probably will listen to hits on greatest hits only, and I really don't know how many hits off of this album even make the greatest hits. But overall, it's fine. If this were a release that we were talking about on a given week from a band that wasn't Journey, I think you would think, hey, this is really good. But there is a standard I think Journey has, and this maybe doesn't quite get there from beginning to end, but there are moments, and I encourage you to check it out. Standout tracks include Higher Place, All the Way, World Gone Wild, I've Got a Reason, and With Your Love. We mentioned the whole vocal rest thing. That's going to come up when we get in 2 weeks to Generations, which is the next album that'll come out in 2005, because I believe one of the issues that the Steve Algieri is going to run into is he's just going to overtax his voice. Probably because the band was touring like crazy at the time, trying to just keep things going, and probably realizing they were making more money on the road than they were making in the studio by this point. Unfortunately, Algieri's voice is going to get the better of him after the next album, and he's going to have to depart. In fact, I think when he left the tour, they had to bring Jeff Scott Soto in to finish the tour because he just couldn't do it, and because of his voice. So, one of those things that we've talked about, but we'll find out what Generation sounds like coming up in 2 weeks. But again, nothing offensive about this. It's perfectly fine. But if you're just clamoring for the Steve Perry era of the band, you probably pass on this. If you want to just hear the musicianship of the guys in the band and what this sounds like, I think there's enough here to enjoy. But if Raised on Radio is your thing, this is probably one you're going to pass on.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about albums leaking online, and I started thinking, yeah, this is 2001. So I started going through the list of music that came out that year, and it's just like, that was the year Megadeth released The World Needs a Hero, which was originally going to be Capital Punishment, I think is how that worked, but it leaked online to the point where years later they finally released a couple of the songs in the form that they were originally written in, but they rearranged everything to create World Needs a Hero. But it's like, yeah, that, Flotsam and Jetsam, My God, Cult, Beyond Good and Evil, Iced Earth Horror Show, Him, Deep Shadows and Brilliant Highlights, Power Man 5000, Anyone for Doomsday. I think that was a big one that leaked as well. Sonata Arctica, Silence, Slayer, God Hates Us All. Like, I could keep going if I kept searching, but I mean, this was the era where I was finding a lot of that stuff online. Ultimately would buy it, but the old like IRC MP3 rooms were just, I mean, to me, like, people talk about their fondness for Napster, which I did use it, but I liked obscure stuff. Napster didn't always have the music. They didn't always have Sonata Arctica albums.
Right.
So, but yeah, we were definitely now in that era where high-speed internet becomes a little more prevalent, and you know, you're not having to like go to bed with the phone line tied up hoping you download the whole album before you wake up.
Well, and you know, obviously there was a problem at that era, especially where you had stuff that was already released and then it just got uploaded to there and people just downloaded it for free. That led to the whole Napster issue. But obviously, you also had cases like this where albums would release overseas months before they ever were released in the U.S. So if you were in the U.S., you know, the only way you could get it was to download it. And in most cases, if it was something like that, it probably wasn't on Napster. But that was the thing the anime industry was fighting at the same time, where you had these shows that were airing in Japan that were well known, that those episodes hadn't come to America, and people started realizing, like, hey, I can download these episodes and somebody can put a really quick subtitle on it and we can have fan subs in a new way that transcends the old cassette trading days of fan subs. And that totally changed that industry as well. So it's honestly like we could do probably a whole episode on the era between like 1997 and 2005 as far as like what's about to happen, what is going on, and how it's changed media really forever.
And it's funny, too, when you think that there were a lot of those kind of legacy bands that were releasing albums up to that point that I was buying, like, you know, and a lot of people were. Bon Jovi released Crush probably not long before that, and that was huge. Def Leppard had their one album that was like kind of a return to form that I think was popular. But you know, when I look and see the albums that came out in 2001, it's like that shift starting to occur where it's like I'm finding new bands now. Like it's not so much them now. It's Sonata Arctica, it's Ed Guy, it's you know, the Rasmus, Him, you name it, and bands that looking through here, it's like, man, I probably should have picked up on these guys earlier and I didn't. Bands like Angra, it's like why didn't I find out about them until years later? But yeah, I mean, because of the internet, it opened up a whole new roster of bands that I could follow. I didn't have to worry about whether the new LA Guns album was any good or not. Yeah,
for sure. And it, you know, for those bands that wanted to continue to do their thing, they kind of had to up their game because now they were competing against a worldwide roster of bands that, you know, I think of still to this day, the Stradivarius song Hunting High and Low, there was a rip from some music channel over in Europe that appeared on YouTube for the longest time. I don't even know if it's still on there or not, Yerky or something. I don't know. But that was how I learned about that song. I would have never learned about that song and maybe never learned. I mean, eventually, yes, I would have learned about the band, but that's how I found them out, was through that video. And again, that's something that they weren't playing out on MTV.
And the other problem you run into now is that we've now successfully made individual songs worthless as far as what you're willing to pay for them.
Yeah.
Like, basically. Yeah, if you're a fan and you're a reasonable consumer, you'll still buy the stuff, but how many people did? Like, you know, there's a reason that Lars Ulrich battled Napster, because there were a crap ton of people getting music for free, and we're still kind of stuck in that world now where, I mean, people will subscribe potentially to streaming services, but the value of an individual song is next to nothing.
Yeah, and he was right. I mean, let's look back on it, be fair. Like, he was the bad guy at the time and certainly took his share of hate for it, but he was right. Like, it was going to change the music industry in a lot of ways for the worse because it was devaluing the music. And the reality of it is yeah, a band who was relying on somebody to buy that song for 99 cents from iTunes was probably more directly impacted by it. But Lars Ulrich had the name that could get the headlines and
You're
people
pay
would pay
attention.
attention. Yeah. And that, I feel like that was lost on a lot of people because like, oh, well, you guys don't need the one download paid for. You've got millions and millions of dollars. True. But they weren't fighting for themselves. They were fighting for a lot of the bands that we talk about on a week-to-week basis to make sure that they could still make music.
And even if they were only fighting for themselves, at what point do you get to tell them you have to work for free for the rest of your life?
Right, you made enough.
All that work that you put in that there was a dollar value on, now that amount, your wage is zero. Like, you don't deserve to make any more money off of your labor. It's such a weird concept to be like, well, you guys have already made a bunch of money. Yeah, well, they're still working.
Yeah, they're still releasing music even to this day. So, and still doing some really cool things out there. So, but yeah, when you read something from this era, it does take you back to where it's like, this is really where that paradigm shift happened.
I lived this.
Yeah, I lived this, which, sometimes it's depressing when you're talking about things that were 25 years ago. But, that's the way it goes. But, definitely check out the Journey album again. It's fine. But I'm guessing a lot of them are going to fall into that category as we go forward. We'll find out about Generations coming up in a couple of weeks. That is going to wrap things up on this edition of the Hard Rock Empire. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back again next Monday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. It'll be the music of August the 7th coming up next week. We'll see what the music gods have for us next Monday night, so make sure you join us. And again, we encourage you, join the Discord, join our conversation, share our stuff on social media if you get a chance, or just comment on social media. We'll do our best to comment back. We appreciate the interaction, and it was really cool, again, to get to do that last week, and certainly much appreciated. But that'll do it for this week. A big thanks to Mike for playing hurt, but making it through another podcast. Of course, a big thanks to Stoveleg Media for their continued support, and a big thanks to you for listening whenever and wherever you're listening. That's going to wrap things up. We'll talk to you again next Monday night for another episode of the Hard Rock Empire. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Hard Rock Empire.